Hello, Tabatha. What are we doing today?
Hey, Sharilyn. Today we are doing our very first bestie book swap.
Yay!
Let's go ahead and get started.
Cheers, besties. All right, Tabatha, what is a bestie book swap?
A bestie book swap is where we're each choosing 3 different books for each other, and we're gonna do these monthly. So we've already gotten started on her swap as well. That'll be next month, so stay tuned for that one. Make sure to hit that subscribe button if you're looking forward to seeing Sharilyn's books that she got and is in the process of reading. But for my swap, Sharilyn, what books did you give me?
I picked 3 books that, in this case, I have actually read, and these are from my actual physical library. In the future, though, that won't always be the case because someone has a much bigger physical library than someone else, and someone has read a whole lot more than someone else, and someone has read pretty much everything that someone else has read. So, not every book in these bestie book swaps will be books that we have specifically read, but they will be books that we want the other to read. So, kind of anything, the sky's the limit. We get to do what we want.
Yeah.
And you're along for the ride.
We get to choose each other's books.
Yes. The power is in our hands.
Yes.
So for this first bestie book swap, I picked these 3 books for Tabatha. They are books I have read, so they have a bit more meaning behind why I chose them. Book number 1 was 9 Perfect Strangers, and I'll also have y'all know that I read all these books much longer ago than anything else I've read recently. So bear with my non-existent memory. But I picked this book because it was an interesting read. It had twists and turns. It also has a TV show, which I think was on Hulu. And I actually read that first before the book. So I knew... I read the TV show before I watched the book. No, I watched the TV show. And so I knew the story going into it, but there are differences that were interesting to see in book form. So I picked this one mainly because it was a book I own that she hasn't read yet. And I had very, very slim pickings. But it was also a good read. It was interesting. It had some mystery to it. So all of that was book number 1 for Tabatha. Book number 2 is by one of my favorite mystery authors, and that is The Likeness by Tana French. This is actually book 2 in this series. However, it's a series of interconnected standalones. So it's okay to start not on book 1. So this one is my favorite in the series for the setting, the story, the mystery, the characters, all of those things I loved in this book. And so I made her read it, and you'll get to hear her thoughts. This last book, the reason I picked this last book has less to do with story and more to do with why I own the book. This is The Star Is My Destination by Alfred Bester. And you probably haven't heard of it because I don't know who has. I think it was written in the 60s. The reason I have even read this book was because of my senior English teacher. This was actually a required reading in high school, but I loved the book. It is sci-fi. It has a very strong influence from The Count of Monte Cristo. The story here is similar to that story, except a lot shorter. And I haven't read The Count of Monte Cristo, so I don't know if that's fun to read, but this is definitely fun to read. And very quirky, very weird. So there are a lot of elements here that I expected Tabatha to like in the quirky, weird side of things. But to me, the book itself is meaningful to me because of my high school senior English teacher. She was phenomenal. Shout out Mrs. Cook. She's the reason I read this book. She is the reason I own this book, but also my sister gave me this copy. So there's that extra layer. And then our year was her last year teaching. So she retired after art class. And so there's just a lot of fond emotions and memories tied to this book. And so that's why it's one of my all-time favorites.
I feel like not a lot of teachers choose this level of sci-fi for a book either. Yeah,
it was so strange. I actually had some really good reads in high school English. I feel like that is not the norm.
Yeah.
To have a required reading book that I wanted to keep with me throughout the rest of my life. So book number 3.
Okay, so I have already read these now. In the future, going forward, other than she's already started the books that I gave her as well, but going forward, we want to hand them off as a surprise during the intro. So these 2 are going to be the only ones where we already know what it is, but in the future, they're going to be surprises. So yay! Let's go in order from my least favorite to my favorite.
Sounds good.
Okay, yes. Cool. So my least favorite, which when we discussed this before, this isn't going to be surprising to Sharilyn at all, was 9 Perfect Strangers. You even said going into this, you expected this to be my least favorite. So that was accurate. I know my dad though. I think what happened here is this didn't lean enough into the horror for me. To give you like a little brief synopsis, 9 people are going into a health resort to improve their lives for whatever reason. They're promised they go here for 10 days. Their lives are going to be completely different. Everyone there is very eccentric and something's very clearly going on there that is outside of the normal. So that's the basic setup. We've got perspectives also from some of the staff members. There's a lot of point of views.
Yes.
And that's one of my problems.
Yeah.
Is I don't like books that are this short with this many point of views.
There are actually a lot of point of views. I didn't think of that.
Yeah, I've learned that very quickly, that multiple point of views where we're not getting that much time with each character isn't something that generally works for me, just because I'm such a character-driven person.
Yeah, you don't have enough time
Yes.
to build a relationship.
And I found the characters unlikable, but not in a fun way. So like they were unlikable, but like Stephen King does really good unlikable characters, like really in-depth focus on like what, like a character study almost.
Yeah.
And I felt like this was almost like a watered down version of that in a sense. And then the only other aspect I can say, as far as what I didn't like, was when we got to the twist. I expected that already, but I expected it to be more. So I'll tell you a little bit about that. I'm not going to reveal that to the camera, obviously, because spoilers. But yeah, I expected that twist, and then I expected another level. Because I've read a surprising number of books that are set in like some kind of resort or whatever, and something is going wrong, and then it ends up being something even more. And so this kind of felt like a meh version of that.
Yeah.
I will say the writing itself, very good. And I will say with the time that we do have with each character, we do get a lot of development with them. It wasn't enough for me, but I can definitely see this being really good to people who like more general fiction, generally.
Okay. Yeah.
So.
I will say, because it was also done as a TV show, and in that, it feels like you get more time with each character, maybe.
That makes sense.
So probably since, and I don't know, but since I went into this after seeing the TV show and I already had a lot built in my head, that probably... I had a very different experience reading it than you did.
I don't think it's like a bad book by any sense of the word. It just was not for me.
Yeah, that's fair.
So that happens.
Cool.
They're not always going to be winners.
Yeah.
So now, I did love both of these next books. Okay.
Yay.
So I'll save the best for last, but the second best was this one. I am so shocked that this is one of your favorite books of all time. This did not read like anything that I have known you to read before. And so this has changed my perspective on books that I'm going to give you in the future for Bestie Swap. Now I really want her to read Red Rising. First of all, what is this about? What is this about? Backing up.
It is like a Count of Monte Cristo-ish retelling. So it's a man who essentially is seeking revenge.
This dude was on a spaceship and he was dying. He was all alone and a ship passed by him. It very clearly lingered and then went on its own merry way. And so the rest of the book is him seeking vengeance for this. I had a really good time with this. So one of the reasons I relate it to Red Rising is because of that vengeance. If you've read Red Rising, you're familiar with the vengeance. There's also, he goes to this place and gets some kind of like
Augmentation.
Yeah. And there's like something similar in Red Rising.
Ooh.
Something similar-ish happens in Red Rising. And so that was another parallel I made here. Plus like a system. He's like a little guy versus the big system. So I drew a lot of parallels to Red Rising in that sense.
Okay.
I don't know that everybody would. So that could just be, I love Red Rising so much and it's one of the few sci-fis I've read. So obviously I'm gonna compare them.
Oh, that's fair.
So there's that. One of my favorite parts was actually an unintentionally favorite part by the author because this word did not mean this.
No.
I texted her because
Oh no.
one of the girl characters who is very much an old sci-fi girl character. There's not a whole lot to her, for being completely honest. There is another one that there's a lot to, and she's wacky in her own way. But this one female character is named Jizz.
Her full name is Jizbella, but she goes by
Jizz.
That's so unfortunate. She texted that to me, and I was like, oh no. I forgot about that, didn't even think about that.
I was like, how did
that I read that in high school?
How did a bunch of high school kids read this and not laugh their asses off every time it was like, come over here, Jizz?
No!
I was dying.
Oh.
Or one was like, get out, Jizz, and I was like, fucking dead.
Oh no.
That's no fault of the author. That is just, the word did not mean that at the time, I am sure.
I don't know. I have not looked into that particular etymology to know if that was in frequent use.
But that made it even more fun. Unintentionally even more fun.
Damn. Rip.
But yes, I overall had a really good time with this one. So thank you for the recommendation.
Awesome. I'm glad you liked it.
Glad to have read a nice classic sci-fi.
Yeah.
So thank you.
You're welcome. Yeah, it's a cool book to check off.
Yeah, for sure. And now I'm seeing it more.
Oh,
I've
really?
seen it in like a couple of different things.
Aww.
Now,
That
ever
makes me
since you've
happy.
mentioned it. So like that was really cool to see, like, oh, Sharilyn loves that book.
Yay.
Okay, and now for the last and best book, The Likeness. This book was so good. To set up the scene, this is, like you mentioned, this is a series of interconnected standalones, and we're following a detective who is going undercover to solve a murder, and she is living in this house with a few other people who are very quirky, very much to themselves kind of people. I can see why you almost relate this to like dark academia in that sense too, because she moves in with students. She looks very student aged, and the person that died that she's trying to solve the case for looks exactly like her. And so these people think that it is her and that she didn't die. And so she's trying to figure out who killed this girl, and she suspects it's one of those people living in that house. And wow, I loved this. I don't normally go for like a detective type mystery. So this was phenomenal. This showed me I might like him sometimes.
Yeah.
And now I've read the first one and I'm halfway through the third one because I loved this so much.
Yay!
I stayed up way too late until like 2 o'clock in the morning one night to finish this book because I was like, I have to know. So this was a 5-star, easy 5-star.
Ah, sweet. That makes me so happy.
Yes, definitely pick this up. And she was crazy enough to recommend the second book to me, which I thought was wild. But
oh yes,
this is the second book. Yes, but I actually recommend that too because this book is so good. And if I would have started with the first book, which I still gave a 4-star, I still really enjoyed the first book, but this one sold me on the series so much. So if you're into a murder mystery type story, if you're into dark academia, if you're into solving puzzles with your stories, this would be a really good one to pick up. Thank you so much for the swap. You did such a great job.
Yay!
Thank you for some new favorite reads.
Yes. You're welcome.
And I'm so excited to see your swap and see how you react to the books I picked out for you.
I'm so excited to talk about them.
Thank you guys so much for joining us for our very first bestie book swap.
Yay!
We will see you guys in the next one.
Cheers,
Bye.
besties.